Alright, Shalom, Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Hebrews. Who all can be an Israelite? You know, it's a lot of people all over the earth claiming the Israelite heritage and been doing it for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And, you know, man, there's a lot of people everywhere claiming the Israelite heritage, and we're going to go over some of these peoples that's claiming the Israelite heritage, and we're going to see, man, if they history match up with Tanakh history, because if you're an Israelite, man, your history got to match up with Tanakh history. It's just, that's the way it's got to be, because that's the Israelites' history. Alright, who all can be an Israelite? Their history has to be based off the blessing and the curses. You have to have both. Now, you got to have both, you know, blessings and curses, showing that you are Israelite, and we can show the blessings being that we got in the land during Prophet Abraham's time. Now, the curses. Everybody's history has to fit the curses that's claiming the Israelite heritage. I'm talking about it's impossible for it not to be, because, you know, the Creator said that it would be a certain way, and if it's not that way, then something ain't right. You know, if the Creator say that the curses for breaking the covenant has to be a certain way, then it's got to be identical to that and exceed that, and it's got to be grievous, you know. So, you know, if you ain't got the curses on you, and then you just hollering you Israelite with all these blessings, then I can show where that, you know, that it is wrong, that you're not Israelite, and that you basically got your heritage off the converts or the people that we abandoned our heritage to, that converted a lot of people. So, you know, your history, you know, has to be identical to the prophecies and dealing with the curses, and you cannot escape that claiming the Israelite heritage, that you got to have some curses on you, especially when the covenant was broken. And we know the covenant was broken completely during what's called the Babylonian Wars, when the Israelite nation, by way of Judah, said that we didn't want to do the covenant no more, and how we was going into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. And we had been on Egyptian religion for a long time. So, you know, the curses was gonna get us, and it's impossible not to have a history identical to the curses, as, you know, a lot of people claiming the Israelite heritage, but their history don't fit the curses. And I'm gonna show some of these groups of peoples, and then I'm gonna show you how they got the Israelite heritage. You know, I'm gonna show you how they got the Israelite heritage. It's kind of it's kind of saying that the Creator is not, you know, what he's supposed to be. If you got peoples claiming the Israelite heritage with no curses on it, you know, then it's like the Israelite history went to myths. Now, you can have and create a lot of folks, you know, history, and attach them to the Israelite culture through myths. And that ain't got nothing to do with the Creator. This got to do with deception and so forth. And that's what happened in history after we abandoned our heritage to the Sephardics, the Sephardims. Now, I didn't show in the video previous to this that the Sephardics and the Sephardims come from Sippar, and how that they was placed in our land, and how that they was Amorites, and then how that they, you know, eventually got our heritage and so forth. Well, those people, you know, were scribes and book writers, and they can create a lot of myths. And then that's what happened. And then when they went and traded all around the world, then they, made it and created communities in those lands that they create, went and did trade in, and then they would, have places of worship, and then they would convert the peoples in those lands and so forth. And then those peoples would grow up with those myths that the Sebhardists gave them, because they Babylonian scribes, and they create myths to keep control of the Israelites' heritage. And then when they create the myths, and then the people live with the myths for a long time, then it become truth for them. And man, it become their truth. And then that's what happened all over the world, with people claiming Israelite heritage after the Sephardi's went to those different lands, and then Ashkenazi eventually start doing the same thing. But his people's been claiming the Israelite heritage from long ago, and then they don't have the curses on them that the Israelites should have since the covenant was broken. And I show the covenant was broken during the Babylonian Wars, when the Israelites were driven off the land for worshiping the Egyptian religions and so forth. We was driven off the land for worshiping the Egyptian religion, and we was promised curses, curses like you ain't never seen before on the people, the hardships that we Israelites were supposed to go through for breaking covenant. And then I'm going to show you this verse right here that is real important to understand, is that you ain't finna be no Israelite, and then you don't get your, and the covenant broken, and then you don't get your name blotted out and your history blotted out. How about the peoples, the so-called African Americans, the Negroes, the blacks, them titles that they put on us since the transatlantic slave trade, are the only people on the faces of the earth without recognized ancient history. And that how did they just say we just from Africa, from all over, everywhere, and then they don't attach us to nothing ancient and so forth. And how all the families on the earth have an ancient history, but not the so-called African Americans, is because they suffer from one of the main curses that the Creator said He'll put on the Israelites. Men is to have their heritage blotted out, their name blotted out. And I'm going to read Deuteronomy. That'll be Deuteronomy 29:20. Deuteronomy 29:20. The Elohim would not spare him, but then the anger of the Elohim and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Elohim shall blot out his name from under heaven. Look, you see that? Blot out his name from under heaven. Now, we the only peoples on the face of the earth that had our name blotted out in what's called the transatlantic slave trade, when the slaves were, the captured people were turned to slaves, and they was treated like chattel slavery. Chattel slavery is like a cattle being recognized as an animal and having no more rights as an animal has, a horse or a cattle and so forth. And they treated us just like that. Everybody know the history of what the so-called blacks been through in America, up on arrival and so forth. And I'm also try to explain the little trick that they be trying to pull on the folks, is that the Sephardi's been over here in the Americas before the transatlantic slave trade. They're Amorites. I made a video explaining the Amorite heritage in relations to the Israelite heritage and how they, you know, got a hold to it and so forth. And anyway, those folks would come to the Americas and do trade with the natives and so forth. Way before they got expelled from Spain after going there in 70 AD, after the Edomite temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and then how did they would go to Spain, Portugal, and then how did they always been in the Americas and so forth as Phoenicians and so forth. I had some history I might post a little bit showing that the Amorites were fused with the Phoenicians, the Canaanite tribes, and how that they always sailed around the world in merchant ships and so forth, and how that they was over here in Americas, founded it, and so forth. And then how that they would, you know, have pigmentation, and they would own slaves and so forth. And then how that when they captured the Israelites and brought them to the Americas, and then they, you know, some pigmented folks own slaves, that folks try to converge that with the Israelites owning slaves, and the Israelites ain't too much own those slaves unless, you know, some kind of way. You know, there's always an exception, but you know, if you really search them people's background in their history and so forth, you're gonna see that they was either a slave owner's descendant that inherits some slaves or something like that. And you know, if a slave owner going to a pigmented woman, that the baby gonna come out, you know, with some pigmentation and so forth, and then they're categorized that as blacks owning, us owning slaves and so forth. The transatlantic slave trade, people owning slaves. You know, I'm sure maybe a Ferdinand rose up and tried to be like the captors and so forth, but you know that was rare. And 9 out of 10, it was these folks here, the Sephardim, you know, owning slaves. They been here, men in America and so forth, with no curses on them. All right. So, you know, you would get your name blotted out, you know, if you broke the covenant and the curses was on you. And a lot of these peoples that's claiming the Israelite heritage don't have no blotted out heritage or name and so forth. You know, that's one of the ways that you can make a distinction between the real Israelite and the people that are not Israelites, is that their history has to be identical to Tanakh history, and the Israelites are responsible for Tanakh history. That's from Genesis to Malachi. You know what I'm saying? From Genesis to Malachi. And that the Israelites' history is in detail, containing prophecies, what's supposed to happen and what's going to happen. So how did all these peoples all around the world get the Israelite heritage and then don't have curses on them? I'm going to try to show you Israelites that those folks that's claiming the Israelite heritage come off peoples that we abandon heritage to, that's been in our land. Them Amorites. You know, they've been everywhere. They've been everywhere. All right, let's see how we're gonna get this going. I wanna tackle this, this history, meaning about the folks from India. You know, the people from India claim that they Israelites. You know, the people from India claim that they Israelites, and they believe this, and they got a whole structure and community functioning based upon this, and got recognition, world recognition all over the world that they are Israelites. But you know, the time is coming now where the truth is coming out, and we gonna see who a real Israelite is based upon prophecy from the Creator in the Tanakh history. All right, look, the folks from India, look, the Indian Jews, look, the history of the Jews in India. The history of the Jews in India, they try to say, because of the myths, that they are referred to as Benia Manashil. You know what I'm saying? They try to say that they come off Joseph, prophet Joseph children, Manasseh, the oldest, and we know that he was a half Egyptian, a half African Egyptian, and it wouldn't make no sense, man, for him to go to India when him and his brother had a strong relationship with Africa, with Egypt, and it was one of the reasons why the covenant was broken was because the tribe of Ephraim kept going from Egypt to Assyria, breaking, transgressing the covenant by fooling with them idol worshiping nations and so forth. So we know that Manasseh did not go to India, way over here. Look, from way over here and end up way over here staying, or even have descendants that way when they knew that they mother Anaset, was of Egyptian Hamite origin. Let me show this real quick. It ain't just necessarily talking about Manasseh, but we know that he gonna follow step with his brother. That he gonna be in tune with his brother, and I can show his brother Ephraim had a strong Egyptian connection. A strong Egyptian connection. Alright? So, and Ephraim is the most active tribe in the Tanakh besides the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Ephraim gonna be the most active and doing the most things. So, if brother Manasseh gonna, kind of be in tune with it. And if you go to Hosea 12, Ephraim feedeth on wind and followed after the east wind. He daily increaseth lies and desolation, and they do make a covenant with the Assyrians, and all is carried into Egypt. So Manasseh gonna basically be hanging with his brother that's, doing trade and so forth, and that he's not gonna go to Egypt. He's not gonna go to India instead of going to Egypt, where everything is at, and they can't show no time in history where the Israelites went to India. Our history is documented all the way to the end, like 98 years before the Greeks get in. In the book of Malachi gonna be the last, and it tells you the conditions of the Israelites, and only a small percentage of Israelites were taken to Babylon. That's right here. That's right there. In Iraq, and how that they was told to come back home. They was the good figs that believed in the Creator and trusted that He would bring them home by the Persians, as the Creator prophesies Osiris being born to defeat the Babylonians, and then that come to pass. So those Israelites would see Cyrus come on the throne, and knowing that it was a prophecy 152 years before he, was born, and that they would come back home like they were told to do before that they left. It was a promise to bring them home in the book of Jeremiah, and then they was called the good figs, whereas the Israelite nation was the bad figs, and we went off into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. That's what the book of Jeremiah is about. So no Israelites went to India, way over there to a foreign land. We don't know nobody and so forth. And then they'll try to say that Solomon had some ships that went over that way looking for gold. And it don't make no sense when all the gold is in the Sudan. That's probably Oprah right there is the Sudan, and how that we was on the Red Sea in these parts in Africa getting the gold and so forth. And I could show that a lot of minerals, I got a video explaining how a lot of minerals that we had in the breastplate that you can only get in Africa, and that's where we were in Africa from being, in Egypt and so forth. And we know that the promised land is on the Africa plateau, and that is part of Africa, is Northeast Africa. All right. So we know ain't nobody left during Solomon time, and I'm going to try to see if I can show this. Ain't nobody left during Solomon time to go nowhere. Man, if you go to, let me see, I think that's 1 Kings 9:25. And even if some Israelites went way off somewhere, they know that they had to be back. And this is like 200 or 300 years, man, before we got kicked out the land and went into Africa. Is that all Israelites knew under King David and Solomon to be back home 3 times in a year. They had to be home. So it wouldn't make no sense for no Israelites to be nowhere. And then if Israelites were anywhere during that time, I can show in the book of Jeremiah where he said that the Israelites come from all over to get home. Look, this is during the Babylonian War. So if Israelites were in any lands and so forth, and they knew the troubles that we was having during the Babylonian Wars, is that they would have came on home. I already showed that the Assyrian captivity is nothing like history tried to portray, and that, the Assyrians needed the 3 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, to help them fight against the Babylonian Scythians and so forth, and the nations that they had been robbing and jacking for a long time had got some strength, and they needed us to help us. I got videos going into that. But if you look here, look. But Johan, the son of Ker, and all the captains of the forces took all the remain of Judah that were returned from all nations, whether they had been driven to dwell in the land of Judah. So they come back from all nations. They come back from all nations. So ain't no Israelites and been stuck in India and so forth, and even going to India when we had to be at home 3 times a year. You see, 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar. So that's First Kings 9:25. But let's go to Exodus 23:27, and this will show you that Israelites couldn't be in other lands for a long period of time and so forth. Is that they had to be home, and if any Israelites left during a Solomon time, man, he would get cut off if he didn't come back to the promised land the 3 times a year. The Creator gonna be against them and so forth, and they not gonna be able to keep their heritage and worship the Creator in a foreign land and so forth. That's why He gave us the promised land and wanted us to be a priestly nation there. That's why we was told to resist all the foreign gods and fake gods and idols and so forth there. He didn't tell us to go to China, India, or deep inside Africa or South America or Europe to do this, and then how we were supposed to do this on the promised land. But look here, man, if you go to Deuteronomy, that'll be Exodus 23. Let's see what Exodus 23 got to say. Exodus 23:7. So we know the Israelites had to be home and couldn't be in all these lands. Look, Exodus
23:17. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Elohim. So that's 3 times in the year you had to be at the promised land, and you wouldn't know that the temple was destroyed if you left during Solomon time, and then it got destroyed 200 some years later during the Babylonian wars. That you would be cut off and lost, and that ain't happened. They couldn't keep their heritage intact, being in the land for all that time, and they couldn't say that they was Israelites, because you had to be home 3 times a year. And the Israelites, let me go back to Solomon, that Solomon thing, and I could show that Solomon sailed it around the Red Sea and didn't go to India. Uh, None of his folks that he had working for him had a reason meant to go to India. But look here. So we know 3 times in a year did Solomon burnt offerings and peace offerings. Now Solomon keeping in custom with what we had established from Exodus and what the Creator told Prophet Moses, how we had to appear 3 times a year. And this is like almost 300 years, 400 years later, and Solomon's still doing what was told. Look, so let me see. Solomon 3 times a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar he built unto the Elohim, and he burnt incense upon the altar that was before the Elohim. So he finished the house. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezragar, which is beside Eloth on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. You see? And Hiram sent in the navy his servants and shipmen that had knowledge of the sea with the servants of Solomon, and they came to Ophir and fetched thence gold 400 and some. See, and when the Queen of Sheba gonna be done heard about it, so he gonna be over in these parts, and so forth, and his workers gonna be over in these parts. I say Oprah is gonna be the Sudan and so forth, because they had a lot of gold back then. The Egyptians used to go all the way down to Upper Egypt, meaning get the gold and so forth, and had plenty gold coming from the Sudan, and that how that we was around these parts and Edom's heritage and so forth, because King David done whooped him, and wasn't no males able to stand up. Wasn't no males able to stand up to Solomon and so forth, because his daddy had whooped him. Let me see if I can show his daddy whooping him. King David whooping them Edomites. Let me see if I can. And I used to know exactly where that was. King. Let me see. He still might talk about it. Solomon might talk about it. All right, here it is. This 1 Kings 11, verse 14. And the Elohim stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad, the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. For it come to pass, when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the host, was gone up to bury the slain, after he had smitten every male in Edom, for 6 months did Joab remain there with all Israel, until he had cut off every male in Edom. Everybody that stood up and that wanted to fight, we got them. And then how did they would take off and run to Egypt, and Pharaoh would give the Edomites some land. That's why come the Edomites control Egypt right now today, is because Pharaoh gave them land during King David's time, after he whooped on him and so forth. See, look. Then Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child, and they arose out of Medina and come to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they come to Egypt unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, which gave him an house and appointed him victuals and gave him land. See, that's why the Edomites control Egypt right now, is because the Pharaoh gave them land after King David none whooped on them. So, but we can see that King Solomon ain't sent no Israelites to to India because he was in the Red Sea, in Edom's backyard. See, that's why we got to use the Tanakh to prove our history and to prove who is not an Israelite based upon Tanakh history. Now, as you read, look, the better established ancient Jewish communities have assimilated many of the local traditions through cultural diffusion, while some Indian Jews have stated that their ancestors arrived during the time of biblical kingdom of Judah. Others claim descent from the 10 lost tribes, the pre-Judic Israelites who arrived in India earlier. Still, some other Jews contend that they are descendants of the Israelite tribe of Manasseh. Me and them folks is wrong. You know, they wrong. And they been, got a heritage off myths. In the myths, makers that gave it to them are the Sephardi's. You see, look, among the many theories by Salva Willett as the origin of Malabar Cohetan Jews, they claim to have first arrived in India together with the Hebrew with look the first arrived in India together with the Hebrew King Solomon's merchants. Now we know that Solomon settlers sailed around the Red Sea, around Edom's territory, but we know that some Edomites got our heritage in 130 BC, converted to the religion that they created called Judaism, and that they would probably go there, and that they would most definitely say that they was from Solomon and from David and from the tribe of Judah and so forth, because they got our heritage and so forth. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I done showed that once today, but let's see if we can show it again. Let's see if we can show it again. If they get our heritage, the Edomites in 130 BC, and then they living in Judah's inheritance, then you know that they gonna say that they Judites and from the tribe David's descendants and so forth. That's just natural. That's just natural for them to do that. All right, and then look here. All right. All right. Harnicus. This is an Amorite Edomite. Look, Harnicus initiated military campaign against the Edomites. He forced his folks to convert to Judaism. Harnicus then instituted forced conversion on the Edoms to Judaism. All right, he forced converted them men to Judaism. You see what I'm saying? So those Edomites gonna be in Judah's inheritance, as Herd was there. Herd, the so-called great, was there. And look, I can show you that Edom heritage is right next to Judah. See, look here. You see Judah right there, and around there, Edom. So they would go to India in 70 AD and after, and establish communities and so forth. And that's a long time to be living in India and so forth. You see what I'm saying? That's a long time to be living there and claiming the Israelite heritage, but they don't have no curses on them. We're going to go over some of the curses towards the end of this video, and we know that none of them suffered none of the curses. None of the curses. They ain't suffered none of the curses. None of them.
All right, so we know that the Edomites then went to India in 70 A.D. And I'm gonna show this. All right, so look. All right, only after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 A.D. are records found that attest to the numerous Jews settlers arriving in India, that part of India. See, look, only after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AC are records found that attest to numerous Jewish settlers arriving, and that's like when Ashkenazi, through the Catholic Church, chased them out of Spain, Portugal, and then they would go to east to all the nations, and then when Ashkenazi got at them again through his homeland, the Germans, a Scythian homeland as well as Ukraine, that what they call the Holocaust is that all those Edomite Sephardics would go east and settle in all these lands and then have kids, and then since they storytellers anyway, that the people would start believing in that mess. They would start believing in that mess. But I didn't finish showing that how we had to be home 3 times a year, so we couldn't be in all those places in those lands before the covenant was broken. And then after the covenant was broken, all the Israelites can be traced going into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. And then we know the curses would await them as the transatlantic slave trade was just that. And that's why come the people from transatlantic slave trade history is identical to the curses, but the peoples in India and China isn't. Man, all right. Let me go through this real quick, and then I'm gonna get back to some of that. So we see, that them folks been accepting myths as truths, and then because there's nobody contesting it, that everybody then accepted them folks as Israelites, and we not gonna accept them as Israelites coming back to the promised land when we get there, because we got to go by truth, and we not gonna be living by no deception, and that's why come you got to learn truth now. All right, look here, look. The Spanish and Portuguese Jews, Paradises Jews, and Rid Jews arrived at Majoris during the 16th century. They were diamond business people, and in the Sephardi and Ashkenazi, following expulsion from Iberia in 1492 by the Alhambra decree. A few families of Sephardic Jews eventually made their way to Majors in the 16th century, and they maintained trade and so forth. And look, and then why they would look, and then during the Inquisition, look, these are the Sephardic Jews from Spain and Portugal who fled to Goa after the commencement of the Inquisition in their country. So, man, they would go to all those places, and then some of those Sephardi's thought that they was from the tribe of Ephraim, and they would, because they lived in Egypt too, and that how that, they would, convince them folks that they was from the tribe of Ephraim after converting them and so forth. But I want to show this right here. You see the Randanites? Look, the Randanites, Jewish merchants arrived and trade between Christian and Muslim worlds, but they had these long standing trade routes. And look, man, this is the Jewish, the Edomite Sephardi trade routes. And they would be all in India. Look, all in India. Look, the Hindu kingdom
and peoples. You know what I'm saying? That's India, Kashmir. They all up there. Look, they even in the Chinese dynasty and so forth. Look, they got trade everywhere. That's their road and so forth. Look, they all up in Siberia and all in Russia and so forth. Everywhere. Everywhere. And then that's why come Hitler during the Holocaust would get them out these parts, and then they would all flee, man, to these parts. All right, so we know that the folks from India ain't Israelites, and then I'm gonna go into that lost tribe stuff too, and how that's where all of them try to get connected to our Israelite heritage is through that lost tribe myth. That lost tribe myth, especially them folks from China. Them Chinese, the Chinese ones. Oh man, they believe in the 10 lost tribe, and the Africans believe in the 10 lost tribe myth too. That's like, all right, here we go. History of the Jews in China. All right, we got some images of them too. Let me see what the images of them, man. Here they go. Man, if you click on the images of them, and some of them things will mess your computer up, man, and so forth. But those are the ones. Let's see if we can get to looking. Man, they say that they the lost tribes of Israel. Now they say that they the lost tribes of Israel, but we know better. We know better. We know better because we know Tanakh, and Tanakh is not gonna lie that it never was any lost tribes, men of Israel. And that how that that's a myth. Look, all right. So look, Jews, Jews and Judaism in China are predominantly composed of, look, Sebhardis, those are the Amorites. They've been all over the earth. I just showed you they map, the map that they the Randonite map, and then how did they got around everywhere, all over. Look, are predominantly composed of Sephardi and their descendants. Other ethnic Jewish ethnic divisions arrive represented also, including Ashkenazi. Or they will come later in the converts. But if you read the their history, look, they was even look many more Jews arrived as refugees from the Russian Revolution of 1917. That's one of the reasons why Russia and China is cool, because a lot of those Edomite Chinese Jews gonna be and lived in Russia and got connection there, but went in China and stayed and so forth. So it's more, it's like I just finished explaining the video that how Syria was controlled by the Amorites. And the Amorites are the Sebhardis and so forth. That's their homeland. It went all the way to Babylon, Iraq. But Syria was their number one main spot too, besides Babylon. All right, Ukraine belongs to the Scythian Ashkenazi. That's their ancient homeland. The Khazars lived there, and all the Jewish tribes then lived there, and so forth. Okay, when the West, who is controlled by Ashkenazi, tried to take Syria, tried to take the Amorites, Sebhardis' homeland, and get control of it, that they in turn used they folks, the Russians, to get Ukraine. And you see what's happening to Ukraine right now. Ain't nothing but a proxy war. That if they wouldn't have had attacked Syria and devastated it and desecrated their old ancient graves, blowed up their old ancient monuments and so forth, that they wouldn't be doing Ukraine like that. So it's tit for tat. It's been a proxy war going on between the two Jewish houses since we Israelites abandoned covenant. Abandon our heritage to them. These two groups right here been fighting over the Israelite heritage for a long time. For a long time. For a long time. And there's a lot of history, man, to learn about them. But look here, the Chinese gonna mostly come, off them. And then look, they get their heritage with a history from the Seb and then they convince them that they was part of the lost tribes. Look, it has been asserted by some of the Jews who have historically reside in various places in China or originated with the 10 lost tribes of the exiled ancient kingdom of Israel who relocated to areas in present day China. Now look, let me show this real quick. Let me show this real quick. Man, if you go to Second Chronicles, and I can show the Israelites being there, everybody, they just ain't using the creed, they ain't using the northern kingdom's individual names anymore. And how is Israel or Judah? You either gonna be from Judah, men Israel is how it had boiled it down because we were sinning so bad, and that the tribe of Judah was trying to keep the law, whereas the northern kingdom, after Jeroboam brung that Egyptian religion out and put it on us, that we we was messed up, and that we kept worshiping the Egyptian gods and all the other gods, whereas the tribe of Judah, kept the covenant and kept the law. All right, now let's go to that'll be Chronicles, Second Chronicles 30, and we're gonna be dealing with King Hezekiah. And then let me pull up the king's list so you can see when King Hezekiah come on the throne. And then this will be the next year. This will be the next year after he was on the throne. Look, Hezekiah, look, you see number 13. Look, you see number 13. Number 13, 716 to 687. He was during the time when the Assyrians tried to get into Egypt and ally themselves with the Mishwish tribes and so forth. You, the Egyptians had been trying to, the Assyrians had been trying to come through the land, men, to make a way to Egypt because them Scythians, Ashkenazi was tearing them up. And Ashkenazi had took over Babylon too under the name Chaldean. But look here, this showing that all the tribes here. So all these folks from India, China, Africa, South America, or wherever on the face of this earth that's claiming the Israelite heritage off the 10 lost tribes is a lie, and their history is false. And it's got to come to light. It's got to come to light, and I'm thankful to Almighty God that He let me be the one to do it. I've been doing this for a while. The brothers and sisters that's in what they call the camps, they don't have history like this. All right. And Hezekiah, and then this is in 715 BCE. And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to the house of the Elohim at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Elohim Yah of Israel. Now this is 715 BC. As you see, that King Hezekiah come on the throne, and he on the throne, and he the king. You see? And that how the Assyrian Empire got destroyed in 612 BC. So these Israelites, men, are still around, and I'm going to show you the history is not what they've been teaching about the Israelites dealing with the Assyrians and so forth. All right. And Hezekiah sent to all Israel into Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to the house of the Elohim at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Elohim Yah of Israel. For the king had taken counsel and his princes and all the congregation in Jerusalem to keep the Passover in the second month, for they could not keep it at that time because the priests had not sanctified themselves sufficiently, neither had the people gathered themselves together to Jerusalem. And the thing pleased the king and all the congregation, so they established a decree to make proclamation throughout all Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, that they should come to the Passover unto the Elohim Yah of Israel at Jerusalem, for they had not done it of a long time in such sort as it was written. Now that's what we got a map. We got a map. So all these Israelites still there after 722 BC. They still there. Look, from Beersheba all the way to Dan. Still home. This is during King Hezekiah time, so it never was any lost tribes. So all those folks, heritage that come off a 10 lost tribe, man, we got them. We got them. We got them, and they gonna have to submit one of these days. They gonna have to submit one of these days because everybody's still at home during King Hezekiah's time. And after doing King Josiah's time, he cleaned up the whole Israel from the Egyptian religion that made the Assyrians come out, the Egyptians come out and kill him. All right. So the post, look, so it went from Beersheba to Dan. So the post went with the letter from the king and his princes throughout all Israel and Judah, according to the commandment of the king, saying, Ye children of Israel, turn again unto the Elohim Yah of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remain of you that are escaped out of the hands of the kings of Assyria. And then as you read it, man, he mentioning off names of tribes. Look, you know what I'm saying? So the post passed from the city to city through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, even unto Zebulun. But they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. Nevertheless, the verse of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. And then as you read it, man, you know what I'm saying? You see that the tribe's still there, right? Look. For a multitude of the people, even many of Ephraim, Manasseh, Ishkar, and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, yet they did eat the Passover. All right, when you get to King Hezekiah's grandson, great grandson, it's gonna be King Josiah. That's gonna be Manasseh's son. Gonna be Amon. Amon would be King Josiah's grandson. Now his great grandson, who was a prophecy king, when you read his history, you're gonna see, and this is in 640 BCE. Let's see when King Josiah come on. Look, 640, then all the tribes are still there. Look, Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign. He reigned in Jerusalem 130 years, and he did that which was right in the sight of the Elohim, and walked in the ways of David his father, and declined neither to the right hand nor to the left. But in the 8th year of his reign, while he was yet young, he began to seek after the Yah of David his father. And in the 12th year he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem from the high places, in the groves, in the carved images, in the molten images. And they break down the altars of Balaam in his presence, in the images that were on high above them. He cut down in the groves, in the carved images, in the molten images. He break in pieces and made dust of them, and stowed it upon the graves of them that had sacrificed unto them. And he burnt the bones of the priests upon their altars, and cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. And look, and so did he in the cities of Manasseh and Ephraim and Simon, even unto Naphtali. Now, that's all the tribes just about being mentioned from Hezekiah's time to King Josiah's time. Hezekiah's time to King Josiah's time. And let's go see what Simon and Naphtali men is at. Look, from Simon right there at the end all the way to Naphtali. See, whereas his great granddaddy went from Beersheba to Dan, King Josiah cleaned up from Simon to Naphtali. That's the whole heritage. That's the whole heritage again. That's the whole heritage with everybody on the land. And this is in 640 BC. Assyria don't have much time. That's why come they came to Egypt. Almighty Yah just used the Assyrians to turn on the northern kingdom from for doing the Egyptian religion, and took three of the tribes, and the Assyrians incorporated them into their army and made them fight against the we were robbing everybody, the Babylonians and everybody else. I'm gonna try to show that too. All right, now let's see what I said that I was gonna show. This. All right. So we know that everybody was there during Josiah's time, and then look here, man. If you go to that'd be Isaiah 19. Let's see what 19 say. Let's see what 19 say. I think, and it come to pass. All right. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria. The Syrians shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptians into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessings in the middle of the land. You know, whom the Elohim of hosts shall bless. You know, and then that come to pass in what's called the satire history of Egypt, is when the Assyrians went into Egypt, beat the Nubians down, and installed the Mishwish tribes. Those are the tribes that we're gonna be that ruled Egypt when Prophet Joseph was there, and how Pharaoh was all kind and so forth. Well, we had a long-standing relationship with the Mishwish tribes that was from what they call lower Libya and so forth, and they hung out, in the Sahara, and that's where we eventually would go to when we was destroyed as a nation for saying that we wanted to do the Egyptian religion. Now we'll go into Africa to hang out with them. Now, we know that the Chinese cannot be no Israelites from no lost tribes, because it never was any lost tribes. And then that's where that they get their heritage from, the Sephardi who went there and then convinced them that they was Israelites, and then they started accepting that lost tribes doctrine. That's how everybody around the world got the Israelite heritage, and say that they live in them lands, is because during Assyrian times they say that all the tribes was taken away. But that's not so, as I shown. After the Assyrian captivity, everybody there, everybody there is everybody was there during King Hezekiah time and King Josiah time. All right, man. If you go to First Chronicles, man, that'll be First Chronicles. Let's see, at First Chronicles 5, I think we're gonna see who the Assyrians needed. All right, First Chronicles 5, and then when you get down to look, 18, the sons of Reuben, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, valiant men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, skillful in war, were 44,703 that went out to war. Now look, when you get over to 26, and the Yah of Israel stirred up the spirit of Paul, king of Assyria, in the spirit of Tabernacles, king of Assyria, and he carried them away, even the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. He took them to to help fight against them Scythian Ashkenazi that was coming into the land. And that how when you read in the Tanakh history and it say that Israel was taken away out of his land. If one Israelite was taken away, it would say that because we was all supposed to be on the promised land and not nobody be missing and took off to no foreign nation. That was punishment. So if one person got taken away, it'll say Israel was taken away. And some people generalize that as meaning all the Israelites. So we know that the Chinese ain't no Israelites. You know what I'm saying? And then when you get men to them African Jews, oh man, it's a mess. And I show that the Sephardists went into Africa after being expelled from Spain and went into Mali and Timbuktu and so forth, and then how that they would have pigmentation, and then how I showed that our derogatory name by that time we was called Gramentians and some other names that the Greeks had given us, you know, man, before the Edomites got kicked out the promised land and went to Spain, and that how that we was called Gramentians, and how that the water supply had dried up on us under under the Sahara, and how we was forced to roam around, and we had conflict with the other Africans and so forth, and then that what caused the transatlantic slave trade, and how it took 275 years to remove all of us from Africa, all of us from Africa. All right, so we know that the Africans, man, we already know the Africans ain't no Israelites, because ain't no Israelites went into Africa to do the covenant. We can show that the Limbas and the Igabus gonna come off the Edomite Jews that I show converted in 170 BC, and that how that they went down into Ethiopia and Zimbabwe and South Africa, and then some of them went over to Nigeria and so forth, and that how that they heritage come off the Edomites converted to Judaism in 130 BCE, and then how that they would be off the Sephardim stock and so forth, and then that's why come no curses on them to fit the Tanakh history, because you cannot be an Israelite and not have the curses on you after the covenant was broken, and the Creator knew that the covenant would be broken. Is why this was said. You know what I'm saying? Go to Deuteronomy 31, 31, 31, 31:16. And the Elohim said unto Moses, Behold, thou shalt sleep with thy father, and this people will rise up and go a whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whether they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they shall say in that day, Are not all these evils come upon us, because our Yah is not among us? And this is what Prophet Moses said. For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil shall befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Elohim, to provoke him to anger through the works of your hands. And then we know what that means. That means that it's over. And then when you get to Deuteronomy 28, and then you see that these curses outlined, and then you will know that these folks do not fit none of these curses that's spoken about that would be on the Israelites once the covenant was broken. I'm talking about, man, some terrible, grievous curses that would reduce us to the level of animals, and how the men we've been beat down for a long time. But how did these peoples claiming our heritage got blessings and being in the foreign lands? The only troubles that these folks done suffered is claiming a religion that is not native to their land. And they people give them a hard time, but they ain't just dogged out to match the curses. And that them being dogged out in them lands is because they done embraced it, a religion that is not native to that land, and they people give them a hard time. But once time passed, they will be seen as legitimate and accepted in those lands that they're in, and so forth. And that's what happened. And then they wouldn't have no curses on them because they are not the children of Israel. You know, grievous curses. Grievous curses. Man, I'm talking about, man, this describes the beatdown. And then you be in bondage to some folks that are not your people, to foreigners, and then you can't outrun the curse. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the word of the Elohim, to keep his commandments which and his statutes which he commands you. Look, and we tried to run. Look, go to Jeremiah 44. We tried to run. We tried to run into Africa, and you know what it says, that you're gonna get the curses wherever you at. So all these peoples in these foreign lands, after the covenant was broken during the Babylonian wars, and these people say that they were set up after that, then they should be affected by the curses. They should be affected by the curses, and then they wouldn't be no good Israelites, that the Creator would honor if they was in these foreign lands and didn't come back to Jerusalem, you know, during that time and so forth, 3 times in a year. You know, so they would know that the covenant was broken, because they'd have come back and hey man, they done broke the covenant and so forth. And then the curses, knowing that the curses gonna be on them and that they can't escape. Alright? This us trying to run. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the multitude that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken to us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by sword and by famine. That's going to be these Israelites right here. Go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings. 2 Kings 25:26. All the tribes right here. And all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies arose and came to Egypt, for they was afraid of the Chaldees. So we tried to run and escape the promised land to go worship false gods. And it was no escaping, as the Creator showed and said in the book of Deuteronomy. You know, the curse is going to pursue you. And look, man, it even tell you about the yoke. Man, about the yoke and the chain being on the folks' necks. Look, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Elohim shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and nakedness, and want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron and upon thee neck, until he have destroyed thee. You know, and that's what happened to us. We know what we've been through here in what's called
America in the slavery and after slavery things that they done did to us. Man, it ain't been nothing like that on the face of this earth been done to a people, and you know what I'm saying, like they did us. All right, man. When you get to 26, 26 of Leviticus, it's the same as 28 of Deuteronomy. As long as it lies, let me see. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts. That's Leviticus 26:36. In their hearts uh, and upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursueth, and they shall fall one upon another as if it were a sword when none pursueth, and ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies, and ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up. You know what I'm saying? So why come them folks ain't going through that? The only ridicule that they get is that they done accepted a foreign religion that is not native to their land, and they people then give them a hard time and so forth. But how did they history do not meet the curses? Do not meet the curses, and I show you how all of them got their heritage off the Sebhardis doing trade routes in them folks' land, and then giving them the myths and so forth that they created to cover up the conversions and so forth, telling them folks that they are from lost tribes and all of those stuff. All right, shalom, Israelites. I pray that this video was informative. We're going to start going a little more deeper into some history. All praise be to the Most High Yah. Shalom, Israelites. Much love from the Israelite Brotherhood.